Hey YouTube, thanks everybody for joining the channel again. It's going to be kind of this is Daisy. This is going to kind of be several different items, so I'm going to film as I can. So what I want to do, the first thing that I want to show is I want to put the new valley cover on Project Jolene's LS engine. So since the last video, you can see that I have moved the engine off of the engine stand and onto an engine cradle. This makes it easy to get to the front, the back, and plus I'm finished with most of the bottom work. So now what I'm going to do is replace the valley cover. So the first thing I'm going to do is using a 13 millimeter. I'm just going to remove the engine cover, and this is just to use the crane with, so it's a tool. One thing I want to point out is the way that I have taped the intakes. And the reason I did that is so I don't drop anything down in there. It would be a disaster trying to get it out. So then I removed the cover, and you can see down in the valley, and there's some tape there which we're going to pull up. So before I put my valley cover in, I want to get the tape out of the way. And this is pretty exciting because we're sealing up the engine. Alright, and then just to prepare the surface, a new shop towel. Just going to wipe the surface down. And this is just like a little oil removal chemical that we use before painting. And double check my surface to make sure everything looks good. We're going to get a good seal. Okay. And next we have the gasket, and this is just an OEM replacement gasket. Now you'll notice, and we're going to do these a little bit later, the gasket can only go on one way. Once that the gasket's in place, I'm using the ICT solid cover because I've put knock sensor relocation on the engine block, and when I install the knock sensors, I'll show you where they're going to go. But I wanted to have the top of the engine clean so that when you look down at it, you can see nice and clean and organized wiring. So I know we're going to need our torque wrench at 18 foot-pounds. So go ahead and set that up. Now we're 18 foot-pounds. And before I forget, I'm going to tape up the intakes. All right, so now that that's taped up, I'll get my bolts out. And they have your instructions right here. Give them a quick look. Okay, it's pretty self-explanatory. We'll fit our cover. Yes, that looks very nice. I like that. Make sure everything is lined up. Okay. Now, let's check. So we have an M8. I'm just going to start it with this and then finish it with the torque wrench. So one thing that I want to do here is just a little bit of thread lock. And I'm just going to follow a standard torque sequence. That's why you have them taped up. And now we do our torque. Come on, you don't want to come out here. Okay, now I'm just going to double check to make sure that I have torqued all the bolts. Good. Good. Excellent. So simple process, but it shows how to install a valley cover. And that's going to be the same if you put the NOx sensors in there. But there's a couple more steps if you're putting back in the factory valley cover. With the NOx sensors, you have to lube the seals for the NOx sensors, etc. And it mounts down in there. But we're doing a little bit different here. So with the next thing that I want to do is I want to install my rockers, my pedestals, my push rods, and once we get all those installed, then I want to get the valve covers on. After the valve covers, then I'll probably film another video on what our next steps are, but we're getting kind of close to figuring out where our transmission and what we're going to do with that. So okay, so next I'm going to install the push rods and rockers. So in the repair manual, it tells you a certain way to install them, and I kind of made a sticky note for myself on how to do it in a little bit faster way. One thing to point out, before you install them, I have soaked my push rods in clean engine oil, and I have soaked my rockers in engine oil, and that just helps to make sure that everything is in there. So the first thing we're going to do is insert all of the push rods. And we're basically inserting all 16. And if you are going to reuse any of your old valve train components, make sure that you put them back in the exact place that you removed them, because that is they wear a certain way. In the case that I put a stage 2 cam in it, I wanted to replace the valve train so that it could all wear at the same time, including the pedestals. It's very important that everything is replaced. So we're going to put our pedestals in place. Just make sure the holes line up nicely. Right there looks good. Now, this is where it can be kind of confusing, but what I'm going to do, and it's a lot simpler than kind of just rotating the engine. We only have to rotate it once. So I put a timing mark right here, and you can see the silver mark. That means that my number one piston, you want to start this process with the number one piston at top dead center. You can use a flashlight and look into the spark plug hole of number one, and it'll tell you if you're at top dead center or not. Another thing is to notice that your intake and exhaust valves, your exhaust valves will be directly over your exhaust holes, and your intakes will kind of seem like they're not on top of anything. So the first sequence that we want to do is the intake on 1, 3, 4, and 5. So intake 1, 3, 4, and 5. This will probably be easier set on the engine, but I want to make sure to not get any oil. So intake 1, 3, 4, and 5. So by looking at it, this would be the exhaust. So intake of number 1. Remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So number 1. And before we do that, actually, I almost forgot to lube the surfaces. So put a little assembly lube. I might as well do them all, because this process we're going to do them all. So again, intake 1, 3, 4, and 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We got to do the intake. And the exhaust of 1, 2, 7, and 8. So the exhaust of 1, number 2. And remember, these are the exhaust. We just kind of want to snug them down, and then we will torque them to 22 foot-pounds in accordance with the factory specs. So what we'll do is we'll torque them down and then rotate the engine one full turn, 360 degrees, and then we'll install the rest of them. And everything should seat perfectly. Again, it's 22 foot-pounds. This is just to make it a little easier. Oops. Make sure I didn't go too tight there. And now we want to torque everything to 22 foot-pounds. I've already set my torque wrench. Okay, now that we've done that, now we can just install the rest of them. The same procedure. Take them down to 22, and it's done. Oh no, I gotta go back. This is supposed to sit up top. Ooh, so I made a mistake. So I got too much in a hurry and didn't pay attention to installing the seats correctly. That one is right. That one's right. That one's right. So what I did was installed that the wrong way. It's supposed to go like that, but being if you're looking from the top, like that. I'm going to double check number 2. Make sure it's the exhaust. Yes. Okay. Now, let's go fix the rest of them and retort. So it's important. You can see I almost made a really big mistake. So it's real important to double check behind yourself. All right, so now we'll continue. Make sure we got the right side up this time. And just to make sure, what I mean by the right side up is that's a place for the head of the rocker mount screw. That's the right side up. Now, all I'm going to do is just put the screw in barely, and you'll see why in a second. It's just to hold the rockers on so they don't go into the floor. Now, before I torque those down, I want to rotate the engine 360 degrees. So that's where, again, our timing mark is at the 12 o'clock position. We want one full turn. Now we can finish the rest of them. That was nice because the crank wasn't fully seated, and it won't be until I can put the flex plate on or flywheel and lock it in place. So, with that being said, we are ready to finish up the rockers. Now, let's do our torque wrench. What I'm going to do is just double check all of them. Good. Good. All right, so all the lifters are installed. Now one thing we can do, just to check behind ourselves, is let's turn it and listen for any noises of the valves hitting the pistons. Kind of watch your rockers move. I'm going to spin it about 2 times. Hey. Hey, sweetheart. And we put the number 1 piston back at top dead center. So, next, we'll probably install the NOx sensors, or maybe we'll move on to the intake. See you in a sec.